Maybe some of you already know and some of you might not know, but around the 70s, 80s, Disney was interested in making films targeted for an adult audience. And The Watcher in the Woods was Disney's first horror movie. It was released in April 1980, but was pulled from release after 10 days and future screenings were cancelled by the studio thanks to an overwhelming negative response from critics and audiences. Several changes were made after that, and they filmed an entirely new ending which was directed by Vincent McTivity, and the original director John Hogg had nothing to do with the final ending. John Hogg was not a stranger to Disney, and prior to this film, he had directed Escape to Witch Mountain and the sequel Return from Witch Mountain, which are both sci-fi movies. Producer Tom Lech was the one who pitched the project to Disney executive Ron Miller, saying that this could be our Exorcist. As a big horror fan, this statement obviously caught my attention, and so I went to Rotten Tomatoes to look at the rating, and it has a 50% rating. And that's when I knew that I had to watch this movie myself. The movie starts with a POV and someone in the woods, referencing itself, and then we meet the family and they're having your typical family moves into the big house in the woods kind of thing going on. Then the big sister gets super perturbed because of the wind. These awkward zooms. Mr. Elwoods, who's apparently the owner of the house, at first she's very grumpy with the family moving in. And then she sees the older daughter, and we already know in the first 5 minutes, this girl is going to suffer the most. They're looking down the house while the dad decided to get all smooth on the piano, and then this happens. Apparently the girl is sensitive to stuff, and after that shit on the woods, she's freaked out and doesn't want to live there. But her mother basically told her to stick it and goes away. But she didn't. The girl stared into the distance and like some kind of Andy Torrance, she just repeats cryptic shit and nothing else happens.
I can feel it. Something awful.
We then found out Mr. Elwood had a daughter who disappeared, and the sale lady couldn't be more indifferent to the whole thing. Once they are gone, Mrs. Elwoods has a creepy conversation with the forest.
Is that what you wanted?
And here I was very afraid because I actually thought that we were going to get some kind of like The Happening, where it turned out that it was the trees all along. The family moved in anyways because, well, you just don't take decisions based on the unstable emotions of your teenage daughter. Now, here they really got me because I was expecting something to happen with the mirror, but I wasn't expecting she wouldn't be able to see her reflection, and that was interesting. Then it breaks and a reflection on the haunted mansion style appears and it's all gone. This movie gives me more of a poltergeist kind of vibe than The Exorcist, if I need to be honest. This girl keeps breaking glasses. Till now she has accumulated 14 years of bad luck.
Hey, that's 7 years bad luck.
She agrees with me. She explained to her family what just happened and they laugh it off like some assholes. And now she has to clean. It's nighttime. Close the fucking curtains.
Hit her for being an asshole.
Oh my god, close the curtains! They get a puppy! And we also get the strange POV again. The little sister writes something in the window like a creep, and it turns out it's the name of the puppy, Narek.
Narek.
The dumb older sister asks what does it mean, and I swear to god, you can clearly see it's Karen! She wrote backwards and everything! They tried to build the suspense in here by having Ellie saying that it was Jan who whispered the name to her, but Jan was like on the other side of the barn. But they shrug it off.
Zoom.
Finally someone sees the name Karen, and apparently the Karens have been feared since the start of the times. Someone called Chris Hansen. There's a man in the woods watching a child in a petticoat. Ellie suddenly disappears and her sister runs looking for her while Mr. Elwoods keeps being a creep because of course she will be a creep. We get a shot of a squirrel because I am guessing they randomly saw a squirrel and used film on it, and I mean, they weren't going to throw away such golden material. Jan gets mad at Ellie for running into the woods, but then a boy starts to sing and the atmosphere changes and enchants them because she's smiling and happy again. The light blue makes a comeback and of course only she saw it. Great. Mrs. Elwoods tries to drown her, and I get it's an old movie, but the old lady isn't even trying. She's barely poking her. It looks like she's poking a dead fish. apparently she was saving her. Mr. Elwoods asks about the name of the dog, and the name Karen is thrown out again, and we find out that that's the name of Mrs. Elwood's daughter, the one who disappeared, and that the girl blindfolded in the cheap reflection was her as well. We find out Karen was playing hide and seek blindfolded with some friends, and then the house was set on fire and everyone just ran away in panic and say fuck you to Karen, and she disappeared. Jan tells her family about what she learned, and her mom is pissed at Mrs. Elwoods because she told them there is something in the woods, and like a good teenager being mugged by her parents, she gets up and leaves and we get
Motorcycles.
They dedicated like 5 minutes to this motorcycle race, and again, I'm just guessing they wasted film on that and we're like, use them all, it's not cheap. And apparently the Watcher in the woods also watches in these woods, and it's here as well. Ellie now is a confirmed medium and prevents her sister from getting smashed. Okay, sometimes I do like my breath white, and I like what I see there. Jan tells Mike about the story of Karen disappearing, and it turns out that Mike's mother was with Karen the night she disappeared, so they go to her and she admits it and nothing. Mike suggests to go through the woods, but the woods are bad, so the horses get scared, and Ellie of course runs into danger, so the magic light that I can't figure out how it works causes the truck to crash, and Mike gives 2 fucks and still goes after Ellie, but it's okay because the man is alive. Jen ends up in some chapel in ruins where she sees Karen again and she gets the bird on the face. She gets scared by this random guy and Mike finally arrives. The evil wind returns and Jan says she keeps seeing circles and triangles. We jump to the same creepy guy, and what's important in here is that apparently they did something to Karen and they believe her ghost is back to take revenge. Mike and Jan have a date on the local fair, and at the fun house, Jan is still being harassed by Karen's image asking for help, until this lady comes in and it's super random. Somehow, Jan concludes Karen wants her help. Jan then tries to make Tom talk or she will hit him with the bird. Not really, but Jan has the crow in her hands and it looks very menacing. We finally learned 3 kids try to make a ritual to accept Karen on their group of friendship by doing the circle of friendship. And instead, disappear her and a lightning burned the place down. Talk about something going wrong. Can you imagine just trying to make someone your friend and then disappearing them? Very unfortunate. Later that night, Jan is having a mental breakdown and her mother gives her a good shake. Ellie then is possessed again by the Watcher and it tells Jan they need to repeat the ritual on the next day or they won't have another chance. Jan convinces the 3 original persons who did the ritual to cooperate with her, and little Ellie possessed once again because her purpose in the whole movie is to be just a medium between Jan and the aliens, and explains that Karen and the Watcher exchanged places by accident that night. The circle stood for the eclipse and the triangles were because of the 3 tips of the 3 persons. The Watcher then leaves Ellie's body, manifesting as a pillar of light fueled by the circle of friendship. It engulfs Jan and it lifts her into the air, but Mike intercedes and pulls her away before the Watcher disappears. Simultaneously, the eclipse ends and Karen, still in the same age as when she disappeared, reappears. She removes the blindfold just as Mrs. Elwoods enters the chapel and reunites with her daughter. Actually, I read that last part from Wikipedia because I was really confused. I was like,
What's that? Space fire? Red energy? What's happening?
and yeah, apparently it was aliens all along. Now, as I said on the start, the producers of this movie really thought this could be their Exorcist. However, The Exorcist isn't just a scary movie. The Exorcist is a movie that treats themes about our human conditions, such as regret and fear of losing a loved one. The Exorcist and the Watcher in the Woods have a common enemy, and that's an unseen force that is messing up with them. But in The Watcher, this unseen force messes up with Jan with external factors, while in The Exorcist, the unseen threatening force is inside Regan, and this brings a greater sense of desperation since you can't do anything to escape it. Also, on The Exorcist, this unseen force does not need Regan to be alone for it to attack. It is overtaking Regan and it is there all the time, and this adds pressure because you are seeing how things are getting worse and worse and worse constantly. Another aspect is how graphic The Exorcist is. I am not saying that a horror movie needs to be graphic for it to be good, but it depends how you use it. You need to use this graphic violence smartly because then you can really convey the fact that this unseen force is violent and it's dangerous and you should fear it. In The Watcher in the Woods, this never happens. Like, you don't know how powerful it is, you have no reason to fear this unseen force other than it is being creepy all the time. And just as someone else's appears, this unseen force disappears, so it just becomes a case of just don't be alone and you will be okay. And it is much more powerful to have a force that it doesn't matter what you do, it won't go away, like in The Exorcist, rather than having an unseen force that, yeah, it's there, but it won't do anything if there's other people in the room. To some people, this movie is really a cult classic, and I am not saying it shouldn't be. I am just really pointing out the comments about the producers that this movie was supposed to be the Exorcist of Disney, which is kind of weird. But if we watch this movie and The Exorcist, we can tell that The Exorcist is still groundbreaking through the years, while The Watcher in the Woods has not aged well. The Exorcist is still groundbreaking exactly because it's not only visually more gruesome, but it installs the sense of watching a loved one perishes before you, like Regan's mother have to do, and the regret of never having the chance to amend our wrongs, just like the father. I mean, at the end it makes sense because the aliens needed Jan in order to switch places again, and so the Watcher could go back to space. And yeah, it makes sense that they didn't want to hurt her. But the appearances of the Watcher, they just become really repetitive and mild and boring, and there wasn't like anything, yeah, new or cool or even scary, and this is tagged as a horror movie. You know, like maybe the first scared work, but it becomes so predictable that it gets boring. And they actually have a lot to work with to make this movie works. They had the grief of a mother who lost her daughter and never found out what happened to her, and the guilt of the friends who caused the vanishing, but that is never properly treated. Those characters are just conveniently there when Jan needs them to find out something, or the movie for them to be creepy and make it seem as if they want to kill Jan. So basically all these plot lines that could have served to build up this movie and give many layers to the movie were just wasted. The original script for this movie was much more darker, but the producers of the movie decided that they wouldn't go with such a dark ending, which I think it was obviously a mistake. And also, to understand why this movie failed so much, we need to understand that the producer of the movie, Ron Miller, he just kept interfering with the movie. You know, so if the scene was being too scary or too violent, he would go in and say, we cannot do this. This movie was classified as a horror/fantasy movie, but I would have left it at a mystery/fantasy movie, or even sci-fi, because we're dealing with aliens really, so it's more like a sci-fi mystery movie than a horror fantasy one, because the scares really do not really scare you, but they make you curious, so I think that it could have been more of a mystery. On the original end of this movie, a growling Watcher would appear, like the actual alien, and it will be like this big insectoid kind of alien. But Hawk, the director, was really disappointed with the final product, so he didn't want to put the alien in the movie. So that's why we see that red space light at the end. And the visual effects of the other world, that is where the Watcher lived, were not finished in post-production because they rushed the movie. Because basically they really wanted the film to coincide with Bette Davis' 50th anniversary as a film actor in 1980. So this movie was supposed to be Disney's Exorcist, but between censoring the movie and just rushing it into theaters, they ruined it. Producers ruining movies by interfering with the director's work. That never happens. At the time, The Exorcist had rating problems and it sparked up controversies, but the team behind it didn't shy away and push for it, and now it's a cult classic. The Watcher in the Woods really had potential, but for what I understand, the producers really wanted to make a horror movie scary enough for teenagers, but at the same time stick to the Disney brand that it was more for kids. And you cannot have both. You cannot make an Exorcist version for kids. You can't. I don't know how they expected this movie to do well. You cannot do The Exorcist for kids. You either commit to the horror or don't do it. And that was The Watcher in the Woods. If you like this video, make sure to like it and subscribe. And also remember to follow me on my other socials. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. And I am also on Twitch, where every Wednesday and Friday I play. And it would be really nice if you join me there. Thanks for watching!